Not very much has changed. I mean, what surprised us, I guess, there was a real panic in policy circles, government circles more generally, in 2008, 2009, and the expectation was that there was a need for change in the rules of the game, change in the way in which people think about the economy. We had Greenspan apologizing for not understanding the flaws in the system. We had people like Gordon Brown, the UK Chancellor at the time, giving a mea culpa for his encouragement of excessive financial liberalization. So the mood was that there would be a change, and really there hasn't been significant changes in the period. There have been some tightening of regulations of the most egregious types of toxic behavior. Banks are to some extent more stable. They have more capital in place, but there's been surprisingly little change. Economics as a profession hasn't changed the way in which it thinks about the role of finance in shaping economic and social outcomes. So in many respects, we've been surprised by how little has changed. Indeed, one of the most troubling consequences coming out of the crisis has been the way in which what was fundamentally a crisis of the private sector. This was a problem of private banks, private financial institutions, excessive greed of private individuals, has been converted into a crisis of the public sector. So the blame for this has been increasingly put on the public sector, and the so-called excessive spending of the public sector has become the target of renewed policy. So despite the initial efforts to reflate the economy in 2009, 2010, the fundamental focus of macroeconomic policy since then has been austerity, because the only way to deal with the adjustments coming out of the crisis, it was argued, was to cut government spending and address the problems of a large government deficit, a deficit that was itself caused by the crisis. So I guess we have been surprised just at how little has changed, and what has changed in that context has actually, in a sense, not contributed to the emergence of a more sustainable and inclusive growth path, which is why, despite the fact that stock markets have been booming, the real economy has been performing very badly. It's one of the slowest recoveries on record. Wages have been stagnant, capital formation has been very weak, productivity growth has been extremely sluggish. So we have had this bifurcation, which we think is part of the problem, between a booming financial sector, which seems to be independent of a real economy which is performing weakly, and that for us was the sources of the problem back in the 1990s and the 2000s. So to see again the kinds of problems that we're seeing, as we are particularly now in emerging economies in Argentina and Turkey and other places, is a real disappointment for us.